The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a soft hiss. Ambassador Kim Tae-ho stepped inside, his black diplomatic uniform a stark contrast to the flowing robes and exotic armor worn by the alien representatives surrounding him. The chamber was enormous, its crystal walls reaching up into darkness, with floating platforms arranged in concentric circles around a central stage. This was it. After 30 years of sending messages into space and 15 years of formal first contact, humanity was finally being invited to join the galactic community. Kim felt the weight of his entire species resting on his shoulders as he walked toward the ceremonial podium at the chamber center. The other species watched him with expressions ranging from mild curiosity to barely concealed amusement. The Korthak delegation lounged in their section, their insect-like forms clicking and chittering among themselves. War Chief Thrakmar was massive even by his species standards, his dark carapace scarred from countless battles. His 4 eyes tracked Kim's movement with predatory interest. To the left, the Zephyrian representatives sat in perfect stillness, their tall, slender bodies glowing faintly with bioluminescent patterns. Their leader's silver eyes held an expression Kim had learned to recognize as condescension. The Zephyrians considered themselves the galaxy's intellectual superiors, and they rarely let anyone forget it. The Veil Consortium's delegation was harder to read, their forms shifting and translucent like living smoke, but Kim could sense their attention focused on him like a physical weight. Dozens of other species filled the remaining platforms, representing civilizations that had been traveling between the stars when humanity was still discovering fire. Lee Min-soo, Earth's military advisor, stood stiffly beside the podium. His weathered face showed no emotion, but Kim could see the tension in his shoulders. Behind them, Park Ji-won from Colonial Administration clutched a data pad containing humanity's hopes and dreams for expansion among the stars. The chamber's central AI announced Kim's presence in a dozen languages simultaneously, the translation matrix ensuring every species could understand. A hush fell over the assembly as Kim approached the ornate table where the treaty waited. The document was beautiful in its own way, inscribed on some kind of crystalline material that seemed to glow with its own inner light. But as Kim read through the terms one final time, that beauty felt more like a poisoned gift. Humanity would be granted junior membership in the Galactic Council. They could establish colonies, but only in 12 designated sectors far from the major trade routes. Their military vessels could not exceed frigate specifications. Earth would pay annual tribute in the form of raw materials and agricultural products. Human traders would be restricted from the most profitable shipping lanes. Any technological development would be subject to galactic oversight and approval. The terms read less like a membership agreement and more like a surrender document. War Chief Thrakmar rose from his platform, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber floor. When he spoke, his voice was like gravel grinding against stone, even filtered through the translator. The Korthak Empire welcomes these humans to our galactic family. Such young species require guidance and protection. We are pleased to provide it. Several other delegates made similar speeches, each emphasizing humanity's youth, inexperience, and need for proper guidance. The Zephyrian leader spoke of the heavy burden of civilizing primitive worlds, while managing to sound both generous and deeply patronizing. Kim felt his jaw clench. Earth's colonies were already thriving. Human technology might be newer than theirs, but it was innovative and effective. His people had fought their way from caves to starships in just a few thousand years, while some of these species had been stagnant for millennia. But Earth needed this treaty. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, full of pirates and hostile civilizations. Humanity's small fleet could barely protect their existing colonies, let alone defend against a major threat. The World Council had debated for months before authorizing Kim to sign. Park Ji-won leaned close and whispered urgently, "Sir, it's our only path forward. Without galactic recognition, we'll always be vulnerable." Kim nodded slowly. Park was right, even if every instinct screamed against accepting these humiliating terms. He picked up the signing stylus, its alien metal cool against his palm. "The Terran Federation accepts membership in the Galactic Council under the terms specified," Kim announced, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. He signed his name with firm strokes, officially binding humanity to 3 years of restrictions and tribute payments. The assembled delegates applauded politely, the sound echoing off the crystal walls like distant thunder. As the ceremony concluded, Kim noticed how quickly the other species turned their attention elsewhere. To them, humanity's admission was merely a minor administrative matter, quickly forgotten in favor of more important business. They had gained another tribute-paying junior member and assumed that was the end of the story. War Chief Thrakmar approached as the platforms began to disperse. "Your species shows promise," he said, managing to sound both encouraging and threatening. "With proper guidance, humans might someday become useful members of galactic society." Kim smiled politely and shook the alien's claw-like hand, all while memorizing every detail of the war chief's casual arrogance. Around the chamber, other species representatives offered similar patronizing congratulations before departing for more important meetings. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Lee Min-soo spoke quietly. "Sir, our colonies won't accept this quietly. There's already talk of resistance." Kim looked back at the empty chamber, where humanity had just accepted second-class citizenship among the stars. "Then we'll have to make sure they understand the bigger picture, won't we?" But even as he said it, Kim wondered how long his people would tolerate being treated like children by beings who had clearly forgotten what human determination looked like. 3 years had passed since the signing, and Captain Nam Ho-suk was learning what galactic protection really meant. His patrol frigate Busan Dawn dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the new Perth system, and immediately his communications officer was shouting across the bridge, "Captain, we're receiving multiple distress signals from the mining colony. They're under attack." Nam's stomach dropped as he watched the tactical display. New Perth's orbital platforms were dark, their signals dead. Debris fields marked where the defensive satellites had been destroyed. In the distance, unknown ships were pulling away from the colony, their hulls heavy with stolen cargo. "Time to intercept?" Nam barked. 4 hours at maximum burn, sir. The attackers will be gone in 2. Nam slammed his fist against a command chair. "For hours. Always 4 hours too late, just like the last 3 times this had happened. The treaty restricted human patrol ships to light frigates with limited speed and range. By the time they could respond to attacks, the pirates were long gone." "Sir," his communications officer called out again, "I'm picking up a transmission from the Galactic Peacekeepers. They say they're monitoring the situation and will take appropriate action when resources become available." Nam had heard those exact words before. The Peacekeepers never seemed to have resources available when human colonies were attacked, but they appeared quickly enough when humans tried to defend themselves outside treaty boundaries. When Busan Dawn finally reached New Perth, the damage was devastating. The main habitat domes had been breached, their atmosphere venting into space in frozen clouds. Emergency crews worked frantically to seal the ruptures, while medics rushed the injured to makeshift treatment centers. Dr. Song Eun-ji met Nam at the airlock, her medical uniform stained with blood and her face gray with exhaustion. 43 dead, she reported without preamble. Another 60 injured. They hit us during shift change when most people were in the transit corridors. What did they take? Nam asked, though he already knew the answer. 2 months of refined platinum, all our medical supplies, and most of our food stores. Song's voice was bitter. They knew exactly what to target and when our defenses would be weakest. This wasn't random piracy, Captain. Someone gave them intelligence. Nam nodded grimly. It was the same pattern they had seen at other colonies. The pirates always knew precisely when to strike and what to steal. Someone in the galactic community was providing them with information, and the peacekeepers seemed remarkably uninterested in investigating. 2 sectors away, Administrator Bay Sun-woo stood in the fields of Haven's Hope, watching his world die. The blight had started 3 weeks ago in the northern continent's grain farms. Now it was spreading south, turning vast golden fields into withered brown wasteland. "The samples confirm it," Chief Scientist Lim Soo-young said as she approached through the dying crops. "It's an engineered plague, designed specifically to target our hybrid wheat strains. This isn't natural. Sun-woo." Bay stared at the horizon where smoke rose from farmers burning contaminated fields. "Earth sent aid, didn't they?" "Yes, but there's a problem." Lim's voice was tight with controlled anger. The Korthak fleet has blockaded the system. They claim we're in violation of territorial boundaries by requesting assistance without proper galactic oversight. What oversight? This is our world. They say all agricultural aid must be processed through Galactic Health Authority first. The application will take 6 weeks to review. Bay did the mathematics in his head. 6 weeks for bureaucratic approval. Another 2 weeks for the supplies to be cleared and shipped. By then, 200,000 colonists would be dead from starvation. He looked up at the sky where the Korthak ships waited like circling vultures, preventing Earth's medical supplies and agricultural experts from reaching the dying world. The same species that had welcomed humanity to the galactic community with such gracious condescension. In the capital city, emergency food distribution centers were already running low. Families with children got priority, but there simply was not enough to go around. The hydroponic gardens could not replace the vast grain harvest that had fed the colony. Dr. Park Min-ho worked frantically in his laboratory, trying to develop treatments with their limited resources. Every day brought new cases of malnutrition and disease as people's immune systems weakened. The cure was sitting in cargo ships just beyond the system's edge, but the Korthak would not let them pass. We could fight our way through, suggested Captain Lee Unesio of the colony's defense force. Force the blockade. Bay shook his head. That would be a treaty violation. Earth would be expelled from the Council, and we'd lose all galactic protection. What protection? Lee shot back. They're letting us starve. Back on Earth, Director Han Kyung-min faced similar anger in the World Council chambers. Representatives from dozens of colonies had gathered to voice their frustration with the treaty's restrictions and the galaxy's indifference to human suffering. How long do we accept this? Demanded the delegate from New Perth. When do we stop being everyone's punching bag? The Vale Consortium just registered patents for 3 technologies our scientists developed last year, added another representative. They're stealing our innovations and selling them back to us. Han had thick files documenting the pattern. Human trade convoys diverted from profitable routes for safety inspections that never ended. Colonial expansion requests denied, while other species freely settled nearby systems. Research discoveries that mysteriously appeared in alien databases weeks before human patents were filed. The treaty that was supposed to integrate humanity into galactic civilization was slowly strangling them instead. Every restriction had been crafted to keep humans weak and dependent, junior partners in name, but vassals in practice. On Haven's hope, the death toll climbed as bureaucrats processed paperwork and Korthak ships maintained their blockade. In space, pirates continued their attacks, while peacekeepers found reasons to be elsewhere. In government offices across human space, officials counted the mounting costs of galactic protection. Something had to give. The question was when, and whether humanity would have anything left to fight with when that moment came. Ambassador Kim Tae-ho walked into the Galactic Council chamber for what he knew would be the last time. The same crystal walls rose around him. The same floating platforms held the same alien delegates, but everything felt different now. The weight in his diplomatic case was not just documents and evidence. It was 3 years of human suffering, carefully cataloged and prepared for this moment. Admiral Oh Jin-wook walked beside him, his military uniform crisp and his eyes hard as steel. The other species barely glanced at them as they took their positions at the junior members' podium. After all, what could the humans possibly have to say that would matter? Kim activated the holographic display system and began to speak. His voice was calm and professional as images filled the air above the chamber floor. Ships burning in space. Families mourning their dead. Withered crops stretching to the horizon. Honored delegates, Kim said, I present evidence of systematic violations of protection clauses guaranteed by our treaty. The first image showed New Perth after the pirate attack. Kim explained how the raiders had precise intelligence about shift changes and defense schedules, how the galactic peacekeepers had arrived 6 hours after the attack ended, citing resource limitations that seemed to only affect responses to human emergencies. War Chief Thrakmar barely looked up from his datapad. His mandibles clicked in what might have been boredom. The next series of images documented the Haven's Hope tragedy. Kim's voice remained steady as he described the engineered plague that had targeted human crops specifically. The Korthak blockade that prevented medical aid from reaching 200,000 dying colonists, while bureaucrats processed paperwork. The Galactic Health Authority took 8 weeks to approve emergency aid shipments, Kim continued. By then, the death toll was complete. Several delegates checked their chronometers, clearly eager to move on to more important business. The Zephyrian representative's silver eyes glowed with polite disinterest as she reviewed other documents on her personal display. Kim showed them the patents, human innovations that appeared in alien databases before Earth scientists could file their claims. Trade routes mysteriously closed to human vessels, while remaining open to everyone else. Colonial expansion requests denied for environmental concerns in systems where other species build industrial complexes. For 30 minutes, Kim laid out a pattern of discrimination, so clear that even a child could see it. The galaxy had not protected humanity. It had systematically exploited and weakened them, while hiding behind bureaucratic language and false concern. When he finished, the chamber was quiet for exactly 12 seconds. Then the responses began. "These are serious allegations that deserve thorough investigation," said the Zephyrian delegate. "I propose we form a committee to review these claims over the next 6 months." "The Veil Consortium supports a comprehensive study," added their representative, their smoky form shifting with apparent concern. Perhaps a year-long analysis would be appropriate. Other delegates quickly offered their own suggestions. Review boards, oversight committees, investigative panels, all designed to delay and deflect until humans gave up and accepted their place. Then War Chief Thrakmar spoke, and his words changed everything. "Perhaps," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the translation matrix, "the humans need to better understand their position in galactic society." His 4 eyes fixed on Kim with predatory amusement. Some species are natural leaders. Others are meant to follow and serve. This is the natural order. The chamber filled with approving murmurs and barely concealed laughter. Several delegates nodded in agreement. The Zephyrians' bioluminescent patterns flickered in what Kim had learned was their equivalent of a smirk. Kim felt something cold settle in his chest. Not anger, exactly, but a kind of crystalline clarity. These beings did not see humans as junior partners or developing allies. They saw them as useful animals to be managed and controlled. He looked at Admiral O, who gave the slightest nod. They had hoped it would not come to this, but they had prepared for it nonetheless. Reaching into his diplomatic case, Kim withdrew a familiar object, the original treaty document, printed on Earth paper and signed 3 years ago in this very chamber. The physical copy that had bound humanity to this humiliating compact. The chamber fell completely silent as Kim held the document high for everyone to see. Even the background hum of the translation systems seemed to quiet. "The Terran Federation," Kim said, his voice carrying every corner of the vast chamber, "formally rejects this compact and all its terms." He tore the treaty in half with one sharp motion. The sound echoed off the crystal walls like a gunshot. "We withdraw from your protection," Kim continued, tearing the document again. "Reject your restrictions, another tier, and deny your authority over human affairs." The pieces of paper fluttered to the chamber floor like snow. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the explosion came. War Chief Thrakmar surged his feet, his carapace plate spreading in a threat display. "You dare," he roared. "You insignificant mammals dare to defy the Council." Other delegates leaped from their platforms, shouting demands for immediate sanctions, blockades, and military action. The chamber descended into chaos as species representatives screamed for humanity to be brought to heel. Admiral O stepped forward, his hand resting casually on his sidearm. "The human delegation is departing immediately," he announced over the noise. "Any attempt to detain us will be considered an act of war." As they walked toward the exit through the shouting crowd, Kim heard War Chief Thrakmar's final words. "Fine. We will teach these primitives respect the hard way. 1 month, and they will crawl back begging for mercy." Kim smiled as the chamber doors closed behind them. The war chief had no idea what humanity had been building while pretending to be weak and compliant. In 1 month, the galaxy would learn what human determination really looked like. The treaty was torn, and the real war was about to begin. War Chief Thrakmar stood on the bridge of his flagship Destalone, watching Earth's solar system grow larger on the main display. 50 heavy cruisers and 2 massive dreadnoughts followed behind him, more firepower than most civilizations could muster for an entire war. It was complete overkill for dealing with a handful of primitive humans, but Thrakmar wanted to make an example that would echo across the galaxy. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we are detecting the usual human defensive positions. Mining platforms, communication satellites, some light patrol craft. Nothing that poses a threat to the fleet." Thrakmar clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. The humans had built exactly what their treaty allowed them to build. A few small defensive platforms around their homeworld, looking about as dangerous as training targets. "Begin the demonstration," he ordered. "Target the outer defense ring. Make it quick and clean." The Korthak plasma torpedoes streaked through space toward what appeared to be simple mining stations orbiting beyond Earth's moon. Thrakmar expected to see them explode in brilliant flashes, clearing the way for his fleet to approach the defenseless planet. Instead, space erupted in defensive fire unlike anything in the galactic database. Captain Seo Ji-hyun watched the enemy torpedoes approach from her hidden command center buried deep inside Asteroid Station Alpha 7. Around her, dozens of technicians worked at control panels that had been disguised as mineral processing equipment for the past 3 years. "All platforms, execute full deployment," she ordered calmly. The mining stations began to unfold like deadly flowers blooming in the void. Hidden panels slid away to reveal heavy weapons arrays. Fake cargo containers split open to show advanced shield generators. Communication dishes rotated to become targeting scanners. Engineer Kang Yun-ho had spent 3 years perfecting the deception. Every platform looked exactly like industrial equipment on the outside, while hiding Fortress-class defensive systems within. The Korthak had been staring at Earth's true defenses for months without realizing it. The first wave of enemy torpedoes struck the now-active shield barriers and exploded harmlessly. Counterfire lanced out from the platforms, catching the Korthak ships completely by surprise. Their formation, designed to intimidate a defenseless world, left them exposed to coordinated defensive fire. Impossible. Thrakmar roared as his tactical display showed 3 cruisers taking heavy damage. "Those are mining platforms. The treaty restricts them to industrial equipment." His sensor officer's voice was shaking. "Sir, I am reading weapon signatures that should not exist. Those defense platforms are more heavily armed than our dreadnoughts." On Earth's surface, General Yoon Dae-young coordinated the defense from his command bunker deep beneath the Korean mountains. Banks of screens showed the battle unfolding in space while his staff tracked every enemy vessel. "Fleet Admiral John Mi-kyung, you are authorized for Operation Sledgehammer," he announced into his communication headset. High above the planet, what the Korthak had dismissed as light patrol, craft began to transform. The human ships had been designed with modular construction from the very beginning. Components that looked like separate frigates suddenly locked together, combining into heavy cruiser configurations. Ships that appeared to be cargo haulers revealed hidden weapon bays and military-grade engines. Fleet Captain Park Dong-wook led the counterattack from a bridge of Seoul's Pride, a vessel that had registered on Korthak sensors as a simple patrol frigate. Now it commanded a battle group of ships that had reconfigured into something approaching battleship strength. "All units, remember your training." Park broadcast to the human fleet. These ships were built to exceed treaty limits while appearing compliant. Time to show them what human engineering really looks like. The Korthak found themselves facing not a primitive defensive force, but a carefully planned trap that had been 3 years in the making. Human vessels moved with precision and coordination that spoke of extensive combat drills. Their weapons hit harder than anything in the galactic database suggested was possible. Thrakmar watched in growing horror as the superior numbers meant nothing against an enemy that had been preparing for this exact battle. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Our intelligence said they were restricted to light frigates." "They are light frigates," his tactical officer replied in confusion. "But they are connecting together somehow. Their individual ships are combining into larger vessels." It was brilliant in its simplicity. The treaty had limited the size of individual human ships, but said nothing about vessels that could link together in space. While the galaxy had been counting hulls, humanity had been building a fleet that could reconfigure itself as needed. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. On the trade world of New Shanghai, Zephyrian cyber warfare specialists launched their most sophisticated attacks against human computer systems. They expected to easily overwhelm the primitive human networks and bring the rebellious colony to its knees. Instead, their attack programs vanished into isolated systems that Chief Programmer Han Eugene had spent years designing. Every human-computer network was actually multiple separate systems that could operate independently. When the Zephyrians tried to spread their control programs, they found nothing to spread to. Their entire network architecture is wrong, the lead Zephyrian hacker reported in frustration. It is like trying to poison a lake by contaminating individual water bottles. Meanwhile, the Veil Consortium's trade sanctions hit human colonies that no longer needed galactic imports. Economic Director Shinbore had quietly built closed-loop manufacturing systems that could produce everything the colonies needed. The threatened blockades would hurt the galactic economy more than the human one. Back in Earth system, the battle was turning into a rout. 32 Korthak ships were destroyed or disabled, while humanity had not lost a single vessel. The survivors fled toward the edge of the system, their mighty fleet broken against defenses they had not even known existed. War Chief Thrakmar's final transmission was full of rage and disbelief. This is not over, humans. The entire galaxy will unite against you. But as his damaged flagship limped away from Earth, everyone in the galaxy was asking the same question. If the humans had been this strong all along, what else had they been hiding? The Galactic Council chamber looked exactly the same as it had 6 months ago, but everything else had changed. The same crystal walls rose into darkness. The same floating platforms held the alien delegates, but now there was tension in the air that had not existed before. Admiral O. Jinwook walked to the massive doors with steady confidence, flanked by Ambassador Yu Sang-min and Defense Coordinator Kim Hae-won. This time, they did not turn toward the junior members section with its small, uncomfortable seats at the back of the chamber. Instead, they walked directly to the main council table and took seats among the major galactic powers. War Chief Thrakmar watched them approach, his scarred carapace telling the story of his fleet's defeat at Earth. 3 of his 4 eyes had been damaged in the battle, and his left arm hung uselessly at his side. The proud warrior who had once dismissed humans as primitive animals now spoke very carefully when addressing them. The Korthak Empire, he said, his voice lacking its former arrogance, requests formal peace negotiations with the Terran Federation. The Zephyrian delegate's silver eyes had lost their condescending glow. Her bioluminescent patterns flickered nervously as she added, "The Zephyrian Collective proposes technology exchange agreements between our peoples. As equals, of course." Around the chamber, other species representatives quickly offered their own proposals. Trade partnerships with no restrictions, joint exploration missions, defense pacts against common enemies. The same beings who had laughed at humanity 6 months ago now competed to offer the most generous terms. Director Ryu Jisoo from Earth's Intelligence Division sat quietly in the observer section, recording every word. These negotiations would be very different from the last time humans had sat in this chamber. The Veil Consortium's representative, their smoky form shifting with what might have been nervousness, spoke next. The consortium acknowledges that previous trade restrictions were perhaps overly cautious. We propose immediate access to all shipping routes and commercial zones. Admiral O listened to each offer with polite attention, but did not respond immediately. He let the silence stretch until even the most arrogant delegates began to shift uncomfortably in their seats. Finally, he stood to address the assembly. The chamber fell completely quiet as his voice carried clearly through the translation matrix. 6 months ago, you offered us protection we did not need and imposed restrictions we would not accept. You mistook our patience for weakness and our diplomacy for desperation. He paused, letting his words settle over the silent chamber. Every delegate hung on his next words. You treated us like children who needed guidance, like animals that needed to be managed and controlled. When we brought you evidence of systematic discrimination and exploitation, you offered us committees and delays. The Zephyrian delegates' patterns dimmed further. Several other species representatives looked down at their notes, unable to meet the human admiral's steady gaze. "We are not here to rejoin your compact," Admiral O continued. "We are here to establish new terms of engagement between equals. Humanity will trade with those who treat us fairly. We will defend those who deserve protection, and we will stand against those who mistake kindness for weakness." Ambassador, you stepped forward, carrying a crystalline datapad that gleamed under the chamber's lights. "The Terran Accords," she announced, her voice clear and confident. "Terms for equal partnership with any species willing to respect our sovereignty." The document she displayed was nothing like the humiliating treaty humans had signed 3 years ago. There were no tribute payments, no military restrictions, no limitations on where humanity could settle or trade. Instead, outlined mutual defense agreements, technology sharing between equals, and fair trade practices. War Chief Thrakmar was the first to speak. "The Korthak Empire would be honored to review these accords," he said carefully. The warrior who had once threatened to teach humans their place now sounded almost humble, as with the Zephyrian Collective. Their delegate added quickly. Other species representatives began speaking over each other in their eagerness to be included in humanity's new agreements. The chamber filled with voices as civilizations that had once dismissed humans as irrelevant now competed for their attention and favor. Defense Coordinator Kim watched the chaos with quiet satisfaction. Earth's intelligence networks had spent the past 6 months documenting which species had participated in the discrimination against humanity and which had simply gone along with the majority. The new accords would be offered accordingly. The hegemony of Tor, who had blocked human trade routes for years, would find themselves excluded from the most profitable agreements. The Crystalline Republic, who had remained neutral during the recent conflict, would be offered favorable terms. Every species would be judged by their actions, not their promises. As the session continued, Admiral O noticed something that would have been impossible 6 months ago. The alien delegates were not just being polite, they were genuinely respectful. When humans spoke, others listened. When humans made proposals, they were seriously considered instead of being dismissed or delayed. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson about underestimating humanity. They had discovered that the quiet, diplomatic species they had patronized for 3 years possessed both the intelligence to plan for the long term and the strength to back up their decisions with force. Near the end of the session, War Chief Thrakmar approached the human delegation privately, his damaged eyes fixed on Admiral O with something that might have been respect. "I underestimated your species," he admitted. "It will not happen again." Admiral O nodded politely. "We harbor no ill will toward those who recognize their mistakes and work to correct them." As the chamber began to empty, Ambassador, you looked around at the floating platforms and crystal walls where humanity had once accepted second-class citizenship. Now they sat at the main table as equals, their voices heard and their strength respected. The galaxy had taken humanity seriously at last, and it had taken tearing up a treaty to make it happen.